And so we have a policy, it's not this one, but it's our regular meeting policy and references.
So right now, I can, so we don't have to change that.
Absolutely. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, my fine.
Awesome. She knows that a lot of people ask.
He must not be-
No,
But I'm sure that since all this has happened, there are other people that want to take changes.
Okay, it's good to know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's 5:31. We're gonna go ahead and call our meeting to order. And thank you guys for being here tonight. And item number 2 is communications with public comment. So Mr. Turner and Ms. Leap, if you guys would like to speak during this part.
I'm sorry, I don't hear very well.
Gotcha.
I didn't mean to ignore you.
No, you're
Thank you
fine.
for having us. I have Brooklyn Leach, who's the Economic Development Director for Lebanon and Marion County with me. And we're here to ask for your consideration on local control of the Area Technology Center. Now, you may think because we have a local advisory board that comprises business members as well as economic and education providers from both Washington and Marion County that we already have that. And to some extent we do. But this really was an outgrowth of the status of the school, let's say 5 or 6 years ago before Christina McRae came. And with that change in leadership, this came into existence and really has been very, very productive and has generated a lot of positives, especially with our local business partners. So I'll cut right to the chase because I know the question probably is how do you make up for the $180,000 to $200,000 shortfall? The good news is it's easy. That when you look at essentially 4 places, the Maker's Mark expansion, which is expected to be completed 2022, 2023. Diageo, which should be in full production August, September, but probably really won't be rolling until first quarter of next year. The school tax generated by electric use and consumption in the city and the county. And then finally, the school tax collected from all of us for water consumption. So if you look at those 4 areas, the Maker's Mark expansion, once it's completed, will be generating, and I'm very conservative with these numbers, I want to be clear with that, in excess of $800,000 a year in property and inventory tax. Diageo's electric consumption school tax will be in excess of $250,000. And remember that in January of 2022, there will be a 7 or 8% increase in that because both KU and Intercounty have rate requests. I think KU's was already approved by our PSC and Intercounty's is right behind. So that number will go up by 7%. So another, $17,000, $18,000. So we're forecasting that there will be a total new revenue for just for that one tax of $120,000. And then finally for water consumption, and this is tied somewhat to Diageo, less to Maker's Mark, but that tax will generate another $40,000 for the school system on an annual basis now. All this is on an annual basis. No, it's not going to be in 2021. The real effects of it probably won't be felt until 2023, but those 4 things alone are $1,210,000. And again, I would suggest I've been very conservative with that number. And then yet to be factored in is the Diageo fixed property and inventory tax. And that you should start to see about a year from now or maybe a little after. But just for for understanding, there's $160+ million invested in the ground out there. So if you just say 60 cents is the assessment per 100 value, that's going to generate double what I've just told you. So the income stream in this is all new revenue to the school system. And that's being generated by the expansions and the growth in our local community of businesses, both existing businesses and especially Diageo, because Diageo is such a big utility player. So you can ask either Brooklyn or me, she's much smarter than I am.
So, you know, I've had conversations about this bill, and one of the drivers behind it when the conversation was actually started back in 2008 by Senator Higdon was that this bill was put into place to strengthen relationships between local business and industry and the Area Technology Center. And so I would argue that things have changed significantly at the ATC since 2008 for sure. That our ATC demonstrates so many successes because of strong relationships with business and industry. And so I understand that local control would potentially provide us with more flexibility, but what are we hearing from business and industry? Because this is the side of the conversation that we have not been given as a board, is where are the shortcomings that this would fix? Sure. Because all we're hearing and all we are talking about is how successful and incredible our ATC is.
Sure. And I'm pretty much brand new to the community. I feel like I've been very welcomed here, but still 3 months into the job, I'm still brand new. But I have seen the willingness of our manufacturers, the willingness of our community partners, the willingness of my board members to come to the table when it's time to come to the table, when they're asked to come to the table. And everyone seems to understand that this school system, and I truly believe that this school system is the future of our workforce. We know that. You can look around at other communities, at other places across the country and see what they're doing. I think that, you know, the school system is taking some steps in that same direction when it comes to looking at the academies and the future of what that's going to look like. So I would just say that although, you know, we haven't necessarily heard from all of our industries on this, I am out in the industries every day, and I'm willing to facilitate those conversations, knowing that we have your all's support on this. But I just think that it's so important to constantly be thinking about the future. And I know that's been done, like you said, from what I've heard and what everybody has been talking about, how we've significantly made improvements with our Area Technology Center. I've gotten to know Christina very, very well, and I'm so impressed by her. And I think that she's also willing to always plan for the future as well. She's going to do a great job regardless of the decision, and I really, really respect that about her. I'm just here to listen and to continue to listen to what the community feels like they need to see. And I'm just excited to be a part of the future planning of the direction of our school system and our workforce.
Anybody else have any questions, comments, or anything like that?
Yes, you know, to piggyback off that somewhat, are there specific classes that we're not offering that industries have approached you with to say that this is what we need specifically? And if so, is it a vast majority of them, or is it just one or two different classes, or is it, you know, because if it was just one or two different classes, it would make more sense for us to offer them, but maybe offer them at the high school instead of taking on the whole ACT just to fill one or two classes.
Sure.
So, okay, let me try to answer that. 3 or 4 years ago, our IT teacher left. We wanted to replace that person. The state said no, that we hadn't generated enough interest. Now, in all fairness to the state, that was when the previous administrator was transitioning out, and you all know that we were having a real issue with utilization of the asset on Hill. Today, we have over 600 students going through that. Over 100 of those come from Washington County. And if we had local control with the capacity we have through our economic development efforts and the efforts of this local board, we easily would have had that position filled by now, and there's been a lot of interest expressed. The other challenge with it is because it's so top-down driven, if you look at our automotive pathways, much of it is concerned with powertrain, like an ICE, and what internal combustion engines go into making up that. We're moving away from those at a rapid pace. So we're 4 states have already filed legislation that says by 2030, you can't buy an internal combustion engine in those states. We need now to be training and reorienting that program towards electronics. Don Franklin in Campbellsville has had 2 technician positions open for over a year that pay between 85 and 100 grand a year. And they can't fill them. And Greene County, which has just opted to go local control, is now going to develop a program with Don Franklin in conjunction with Don Franklin that will reorient or pivot their automotive program towards the future of propulsion, which is going to be electric. As much as I don't like it at my age, I want to keep internal combustion engines. That's the way your children and my grandchildren are good. That's what they're going to be going through. So the benefit is the same benefit the Marion County Public School System has with a locally elected board. You guys can react quickly. You're on the ground, you can hear things. We still have to rely on Frankfurt and the machinery that you have to go through to do things that adapt to our local needs. And, you know, they're trying to balance, I don't even know how many tech centers they have now. But my point is that they have to balance all these things, and they like standardization. Well, what's good for Marion County may not be good for Casey County, or vice versa. So the local control gives us the flexibility to change, adjust, or adapt pathways to what's coming to us much, much faster.
And you also said that you've been in discussion with industries, and how have they felt as far as financially, donation-wise, anything like that? Have they expressed, have they come out and said that, you know, if we get the support of the board, then we're willing to give X amount of dollars per year, or we're willing to donate this machinery, or anything like that? I haven't specifically asked for any kind of financial participation. I didn't feel like it was necessarily my place to do that yet with the little information that we have about this. However, what the industries are telling me is the amount that they're paying in turnover is just tremendous. And so I could see this as being a cost savings opportunity for them as well. I could, you know, I certainly don't want to speak for them, but I could see it very easily saying, you know, giving X amount each year would be a much more significant cost savings to them versus constantly battling turnover. What's happening is it's not that they can't find, so let's just say our biggest employer, our biggest manufacturer needs 54 people right now. And so I asked them to paint the perfect picture to me. If you could find these 54 employees, what does that look like? What will that allow you to do? And aside from the obvious part of being able to be more aggressive on their sales and with their product, it would allow for a better work-life balance for their employees, because what's happening is they can't find these 54 people, so everybody else in the facility is being overworked. They're working significant hours of overtime. It's really causing detrimental effects on company morale across the entire facility. And so
you know, that's what their answer is if we need, it's not that we want to be able to sell our product more, it's, we don't want to feel guilty for overworking the rest of our employees. And they say it's not that we can't find 54 people to interview, they can't retain those 54 people. So I hope that is a decent answer to your question.
I think some of our struggle is trying to make sure that we have funding. Due to COVID, everything has just went crazy, but besides the point, just making sure that we have the funding in order to do what we need to do.
Sure.
And then you have this coming on, and that's gonna put us where we really have to put out more money if we were to take this on. And we basically need some sort of guarantee from this side, saying, this is what we'll have to do, and how can you help us make sure that this goes? Because when you get to it, when we start this, if we were to start this process, where's the money go from? It's gonna make us a shortfall here, or, because it's tight.
Sure. How do you all feel about the future revenue projections?
So that tax revenue is, regardless of what happens with the ATC, that tax revenue is coming into the school district. And I'll be honest, the school district is facing budget cuts from Frankfurt with regard to textbooks, professional development, transportation, seed funding, all kinds of things. We're seeing more expenses on the retirement cost side, and I know that our county government is facing that as well. We're seeing increased cost of teacher retirement, and so this $1 million+ in additional revenue from our industry with Makers and Diageo is very likely well spoken for at this point because of the increased cost that we have seen, the cuts from Frankfurt that we have seen, and increased costs going forward. So while this seems like a beautiful place to pull this revenue from, it's not necessarily the case. And so we have to be mindful of this $175,000 for the year after next will continue forever and very likely increase because we will be taking on salaries for individuals working at the ATC and other costs. So that number isn't static. It's not going to stay $175,000 forever. So again, I ask, what are the specific shortcomings of the Area Technology Center, the needs that we aren't meeting for our community and our workforce? And I understand that the turnover issue is a significant problem. We've got 400 open positions in our community. So if someone is unhappy in one particular place, it's very easy for them to go right next door and work somewhere else. But that's not necessarily our lane of travel. What is to make the best decisions with regard to the tax revenue that we have. And so we have to be mindful of where is this going to come from.
Well, I would just say I appreciate and I'm sensitive to what you're saying. But I've learned in my years in business that if you're not close to your constituents, you're going to fall way behind. That's why there's a local board for Marion County, because you're able to listen to them. So as we listen to people, and remember, we have kind of a hybrid up there now with the local board. The high school is getting ready on 4 programs to create a CTE advisory board, very similar to what we've had up there and implemented 4 years ago up there. So if you don't stay close and show that you can adapt and be ahead of the curve, and I use the automobile example, then businesses just, you're not going to find you attractive. And the tech center serves people that aren't going to go to college, but we have to remember, less than 25% of every person in this country ever achieves a baccalaureate degree. The other 75%, we've got to strengthen that career and technical education component so that these people can be productive and do the types of things, especially with technology that's coming. Like the example from Don Franklin that I gave you. Autonomous cars are coming. Who's going to be working on those things? I may live to see that. I don't think they're that far off in the future.
Something too, and maybe someone else can answer this, or maybe not, maybe Mr. Keegan, but because it's a statute, my question is who or how could the statute change in the future? Is this something that, let's just say that this goes on for 5 years, but we have a brand new government come in, they say, you know what, we're no longer doing this. Now we're on the hook for 1 million plus a year. And that would be the ultimate doomsday for us, because at that point, we would have failed the community by not, if we have that much money, and let's just say we can't fund it anymore, and then what? Then where would we be?
I don't know anybody who can predict the future.
Right, I understand.
Right? So if you want to make decisions based on that, then we never do anything. We become risk averse.
Right.
One of the great strengths of this small community is that they've taken chances. They've taken things that maybe were a leap of faith, but converted it. If you look at what our occupational tax revenues are in this community, without that, especially with COVID, it would have been a much different picture. All you have to do is look at some of the contiguous counties, the struggles they're having. And there's got to be a reason why Greene County and Nelson County, there's one other county, have already decided to adopt local control. And I think Greene County comes from a different place than Nelson County, but Nelson County certainly has been very aggressive, takes chances, but does it in a systematic way. And their businesses have been willing to support them. And I think if you just look at tax collections from, and future tax projections on tax collections from our local businesses, they're making a huge commitment to this area. It's an enviable position. I talked to friends in Washington County and they'd love to have our problems.
Anybody else?
I got one other question, and I don't know if you want to hear the answer, but, the ATC is, it's a building that it serves the community, the county and the city as a whole. Have you all heard of having discussions with other government entities, county or city? Would they be willing to look into pitching or, maybe offer assistance on this since, this is something that anyone in this county can get benefit from?
You took it specifically what?
Financial support from city and county government possibility, like the possibility.
We have not talked to them about funding. And frankly, we thought it was premature based upon what we were able to demonstrate to ourselves would be an additional revenue stream. And again, I want to remind everyone, these are minimum numbers. Minimum numbers. So if this were stock, I'd buy it.
What is the deadline on this?
July 1st. You don't have a lot of time because if we miss that date, you can't opt in past that date.
Yes.
Is it possible to meet with the community, business industry, as some of us board members or whoever wishes to attend, meet with the industry and just go over some of these specifics with them in order to get a good decision made?
Well, I certainly think we could do that, but there would have to be some clear indication from this board that you're willing to support local control. Otherwise, they'll just say, okay, nothing's changed.
So that's leading to say, hey, we want to talk to you, but that not be an indication that we're willing to listen. It's not that we're not willing to do, we're just trying to figure out the financial part about it in order to make sure that we can make a good decision, the best decision for the kids of the community.
I think that's the best idea. I think, I was in a meeting Friday discussing this, and aside from our children of our community, I think that our industrial partners are the most, they're key in this. They're a very important part of this, and I think that's absolutely fair. I think it's a good idea. And I'm happy to facilitate that or help do whatever I need to do to make that happen too.
Would you think that would be possible?
On our end, is it a specific number that we're looking to get to? Is there a number or a range that we feel comfortable with saying, look, we had this much money we spent every year, or in the future, whatever, that it would be a definite yes, or if it goes over this, we're looking at definite no, so that we can give them, give them the information that we're dealing with as well.
And I think what we would need to provide from the board is the things that we are currently doing. Because, I want to give our board some, a pat on the back because we currently pay for part of Ms. McRae's salary. We also have a full-time guidance counselor there. We have 2 Project Lead the Way teachers that are allocated from the high school that serve there, and a math and an English teacher. And then we are also paying for the bonding potential because we did a great renovation several years ago when I was, it was back between 2005, 2010. So I think we would want to look at, we're doing that. And then I know that this is a work session and we're talking about our budget, and we're also talking about the federal money that's come down the pipe due to COVID. And so tonight we can talk more about some of those kinds of things, and if there's specific numbers you want to get from us that I can email to you. I mean, we're always open to having a work session, or if there's additional information that we need. Mr. Lee, any board members, you know that.
And I agree that it's vital to have a great relationship, between the industrial board and the school and vice versa. And so regardless of what happens, whether we did take control or didn't, we would still want feedback. Just per se, if we didn't get control of, we decided against it. If there were specific classes or something we could do to still make the process better, or to offer more classes or X, we would still want to hear from you. It's nothing, it doesn't, I don't want it to be the end all, be all, this decision.
No, it won't be.
So,
It won't be. That's the good thing about it. If we can agree to disagree and keep moving forward, it does, it's not gonna prevent me from continuing to move forward and continuing to support, so.
because as the addition of robotics, yeah.
You might be surprised at the classes recently that they've asked that we put on with KCTCS, or through KCTCS. They wanted soft skill training, they wanted 5S training, talk to them, and we do this through the mock interviews, just the importance of coming to work on time and regularly. And the career counselor up there has spent a lot of time developing portfolios each year with each student, and that's part of the discussion. Showing up is 90%. And so that was almost a universal type of request. The other thing that we've done much more successfully over the last 2 or 3 years with Christina is interns. When she came, I don't think we had, I'll bet we didn't have 2 interns. Now we have almost 30. And all those people are being paid while they're working. So that's a big step, and that's another contribution that companies are making to the success not only of our community, but to these students.
And I'll just add an example, the company Montebello, they need about 20 people. The last time I spoke with them, that's how many, it's probably changed since then. But they have a specific skill that they're looking for the person that comes into interviews already have. Now, I know that there's a need there, but I can't speak specifically of what that need is. I think and the types of technical skills that they need them to have. So I think a work session with bringing them to the table, letting you ask them that question, and letting them provide that feedback to you is a really good idea. I think that work session could bring out answers to those questions.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Turner and Ms. Leak, for joining us
Thank you
tonight.
for
We
your
sincerely
time.
appreciate your feedback.
And if you should have questions, we'll do it. But beyond that, I'll commit to you as a member of the Industrial Foundation that perhaps on a quarterly basis, Brooklyn could come back and report out on what developments are coming out of the tech center in terms of requirements. So we'll commit to that. Thank you all.
Thank you, thank you.
Mr. Lee, is your father Joe Lee?
Yep.
Did he work at Telenet?
He did. He used to, yeah. He's retired. He just retired. So
Oh, I said hi.
I'll be sure to.
See you.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda, item 3, is student learning services, and we're actually going to table this item. We've come into some information later this afternoon. We were going to discuss making sure that board members officially and on the books had permission to attend board meetings virtually on an individual basis. We know that we all can do a video conference as a whole, but wanted to make sure that our policy reflected that attendance. We've had conversations with the board attorney and find that a policy change is unnecessary. So we're gonna table this one or take it off completely because we won't bring it back up.
Okay.
All right. So the next item is item number 4. And I need a motion on 4A, consider acceptance of Chromebook bids. And you all should have a copy of the bids there.
I'll make a motion to accept, acceptance of the Chromebook bids.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion on item 4B and be sure to name the company.
I'll make a motion to consider approval to award the bid contract for Chromebooks to Dell.
I'll second.
Questions or comments on anything?
Mr. Lyons, do you want to speak to that? I know that there was a bid that came in that we did not want, the HP. We did not ask for that in our RFP. We actually wanted the bids for the Lenovo or the Dell. A little bit different on the warranty. Just keep in mind that when you do have that warranty, they are only going to warranty 10%. So that's just the way it works. And we agree with what Mr. Lee says. We would like to go with the Dell, correct?
Without the warranty, right?
Without the
Just
warranty.
Device cost
Yes,
is.
because it's only 10%. And so that's going to save us some additional funding as well.
Okay,
And we can warranty these devices through a third party.
perfect.
Our little cowboys gonna do it.
If we get them in time, they can help set them up.
So do we need to alter the motion in any way to take the warranty away? No. Okay. All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Item 5 is our work session portion of the meeting, and so item 5A is ESSER 2 spending plan.
So we're just going to kind of tag team this. Okay, several of us have worked on this. We've also had multiple webinars with the Department of Education. We've talked to our co-ops both down at Green River and Central Kentucky. Several superintendents are sharing different kinds of plans. But Ms. Badgett has been gracious enough to develop a PowerPoint for you all because we want you to understand and know what we're looking at. And we definitely want to think about getting additional services here. There's ways to do things a certain way that actually generates even more money. And it is a tiered, it's going to be tiered. So in other words, some monies will have to be spent the year 22, 23, 24. And so obviously we're also looking at ways that we can put money back into our general fund. So I know Mr. Spalding's got a draft of that, and it's going to change because, as you all know, every time we get a new update from the Department of Education, they change what they want to do. So we're just working on this together, and we want to keep you all informed. And we can talk about this every month. Maybe once we kind of get things in a little bit better situation, it may be that we do it every other month or once a quarter. So we'll start with Ms. Badgett, and we're just going to kind of tag team this as we go, if that's okay. And if you all have questions and we don't know the answer, we'll get the answer. And remember, we meet back together May the 13th, if that works for everybody.
Good afternoon. All right, so ESSER's funding, you've probably heard ESSER's, GEARS, CARES, CRESA. I mean, all of these acronyms, they came out strong with this. I mean, every time it was like someone put on my desk and I said, what's this? And then it was like, oh, we've changed the name. But ESSER's really stands for Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief. Now, CRESA, they just put COVID in the front of that, and GEARS was the government emergency thing. So I know this, we were gonna talk about 2, but I think the journey is about 1, 2, and 3. So we're gonna lead you on a journey. And hopefully,
Get your GPS out.
yeah, if you get lost, I'm gonna send it to Troy, but, or Tracy, maybe one of those, or Scott. I mean, he's coming
That's the
after.
multiple webinars.
Yeah, I've been on cold medicine. Okay, so, the first one, we had, you can go to the next, Kim. So in the very beginning, when COVID started, they gave us the money. They gave it in 2 kind of pots. One was ESSER 1, and then one was GEARS. Now, GEARS came from the governor. It was very strict. We got $130,000 from the GEARS part, and then we got $762,000 for the ESSER part. This bunch of money has to be spent by September 22nd, or September 2022. They may extend that, we don't know, but, because we still just recently got into some of, continuing our ESSERs. 1, we still have money there, and they've already given us 2 and 3. So, but that really was for, and if you scroll, Ms. Kim, to the next one, they gave us new categories. So they didn't match it with anything else. They told us, now spend this money, and here's how you spend it. So things were like the coordination of efforts, addressing special needs. Really, it was about preparing our schools to go virtual or to be in person and be safe. That's really, as when we had all of our discussions, our, reentry plan, that was what the majority of this has been used for so far. All of our GEARS money, that $130,000, we allowed Mr. Lyons to use that for Chromebooks because we knew that was a need. GEARS, really, they wanted you to spend it in technology or food service. Well, we had a healthy food service budget. We already had plans for food service, so we spent all of that. So if you scroll down, Kim, one more time. So thus far, and I say thus far because we still have money. We're being really frugal with understanding we don't know what the future looks like. We are planning for now, but knowing that especially we don't know what's coming. So, but these are some of the things. It's not a all-encompassing list, but a lot of it was PPE. I mean, Mr. Lyons, if you went by his office early on, it was like, Tim, are you in there? Because, there was more boxes of gloves or 14 things of Tide. And, so we did a lot of masks, thermometers, anything, sanitation, wipes. We knew more about where Clorox wipes were cheapest than I think we ever in our days thought we would. We did spend more of the ESSERS 1 money. We allocated him more Chromebooks because when you send, we were already ahead of the game than a lot of districts because a lot of our kids already had 1-to-1. So, and now when it's taking it home every day, that wear and tear, got that. So we did give more in that. We had some special needs populations that needed a little bit different PPE, personal equipment. So we went to that. We sent a whole lot of stuff home. And remember, we mailed packets at the way back in because you could backdate. We got a little bit later, but you could backdate. So we use postage is expensive when you're, back forth, especially when we were learning. But we had some great training and professional development. I know the board recently, it was just this year, but we did hire 2 virtual teachers. So that's, we're trying to spend some in 1, but we know it may roll over into 2. So those are some of the things that we purchased. Again, we haven't exhausted that, but we are trying to be really mindful of, like I said, spending in 1, 2, and 3, and you'll see why when we get to 2, why that's so. Next, Ms. Kim. I'm talking too fast.
Again, that when she says that we backdate, in other words, that was an expense to the general fund, and we transferred that into ESSERS. Therefore, that is a savings to us. And just thinking about, I know it's 1, 2, and 3, but as Ms. Drew had said, when your retirement for your classified continues to grow, everything that we can save is just going to help us out in the long run. Okay.
So then they came out with ESSERS 2 and they said, you have $3.25 million. And I said, there's a number too much there. But Scott said, or assured me, no, that's the actual number. So now ESSERS 2 will have to be spent by September 2023. So scroll down, Ms. Kim. The caveat when they came out with ESSERS 2, now we've been in COVID land. We know that there's a potential learning loss. We know, we want kids back in front of humans and teachers and not so much. So they put in what they're calling the 85-15 rule. What's very important for the board is that not all districts have to choose 85-15, and that's why I really, for you need to think, and I'm hoping that you will share our things that 85-15 is a good rule, because they want you to spend 85% on direct services. They have given us a 14-page sheet that says, yes, this code works, no, it doesn't. And some days we get a new one that says, it said yes yesterday, but it's no today. So somebody tried to spend somewhere. So, but anyway, so the biggest thing for the board is that if we do this with Fidelity, then we get $75 per person ADA extra, which will generate $211,000 extra if we make sure we spend 85% on direct student services. That's a lot of money. We'll get to 3, but two's a lot of money. So, and then the other 15%, we're keeping that in the technology realm, knowing that, we just don't know those other pieces that aren't allowable. But again, that's why sometimes we may pay for something out of one still, because we want to keep 15% low. If that makes, and it's a really, it sounds easy, 85-15, but there's a lot of codes out there. So, but it's great. Really, we're at a point where we're thinking big. We've always thought big. Well, now we've got some money to think bigger in some areas, as long as we follow the rules. And this is federal money, so that's for me, then I'll get audited. So I'm gonna try to have a clean audit that we spend it correctly. I'm used to the 1 million, and I thought that was a lot. But, so we'll scroll down a little bit more.
And also let you all know that this is tied directly to our accounting system use. And so it's either an approved code or it is not. And we've already been notified that we will be audited, just like Title I. And I'm going to give some props to Ms. Badge if we just had plain Title I on it. And I don't know if you all understand just how big a deal that is, but it's a very big deal. And I'm going to say thank you to her. Just get ready for the next one.
Yeah, I slept for a day, I guess. But then she handed me 3.25. Okay, so what I did was, and when we all talked together, I wanted to give, for transparency to the board, the next thing you're gonna see is, it's really a Google sheet. Now, it's not gonna add up, you're gonna see a column, and it's not gonna add up to 3.252 million. But what I wanted to share with you is, these are the things right now, you'll see a category like, what we potentially want to pay for, kind of what that means, and then there's a total. It's not going to add up to 3.2. It's just because what we did when I got 3.2 handed to me, I said, we're having 3-year contracts. We're going to have discounts. We're going to give the teachers what they want, but have it like you can have it for 3 years. That's a whole lot easier to sell. Well, you're going to have it this year or not this year. So some of those numbers are big. But we could, again, use it out of 1, 2, or 3. So, yeah, so you won't see, if you count them all up, it's not going to be 3, not going to add up that. So, Kim, you can click on that. So basically, and this is for us as well as we move forward, these are some of the things that we have identified with our principals. When I've been in directors meetings, this is what people are spending on, because everybody's trying to, this is a large amount of money that a lot of people are getting. So this is, kind of where we feel. Now, we know that we don't know where we might go, if we have to go back on virtual, if we're going to be in front. But there's some of these programs that teachers have been using that they like. They're always, usually it might be spent out of title funding, so it's coming directly from the school. And that was the other thing. We felt like this was the time to free up some of that school money for the principals and, to do some of the different things. So some of those we pulled back out. One new one potentially is the iReady that you may not have heard about. It could be a replacement for MAP. But we're doing a pilot and they're seeing that, but that's a $1 million, but again, it's 3 years worth. So, and if we keep it, but you can do a lot more when you say you have 3 years or something, that if after the end of 3 years it's not working, it's time to, it's, the trash to treasure thing. Where we've been, some are using it, some are not, having a little bit more consistency so that all of our schools can have some of the same things and have some of the same discussions. So the virtual teachers, we put that on there. I know KD's right now, you gotta have a waiver and things, but we felt like let's just leave that kind of in there. So, and then you can see some of the other pieces, professional learning, individual plans. This year, like I spoke about, I think at the last board meeting, there's a whole bunch of money in there for summer programming. And that's going to be important because they want to see what you're doing. Because we're not having the traditional Summer Dream Academy, we are sending home those 3 sets. 2 will be mailed, 1 will be sent home. And then the money for the teachers that you all approved at the last board meeting, that is a line item in there. You'll see some other things that utilities, insurance, that Scott will probably talk about later. Those are some of the things. SEL curriculum, mental health is a big issue that they want us to make sure we're addressing. Again, we were already, proactive. We've been talking about that. We have terrace metrics. We have these things. So, but we just wanted to keep that line item saying, what happens if we have to go back? What happens? Our kids need support. So that's kind of it. Like, again, but I just kind of labeled it out there. I tried to say if it was a 3-year or a 1 year, but again, it's just so fluid that I need, and I will probably, I'll go up there. There's a position up there. I'll own that, because this is 10 million by the time and if we don't do it right, then, I need laser focus. I'm director of instruction plus federal programs, and then you're putting the 10 million, and I just, I want to make sure that we spend our money and we get that 211. And then, I want to be able to say, oh, did you sign that PO? Did you sign that? Who is doing that? So in finance world, we don't know, building projects may be coming up, that is a different ball game. And I didn't even think about this at first. Some of the other directors when I was at my CKAC meeting said they can't do that without having kind of a finance component working with that person. So, I will be, it'll probably be in front of the board again, but I think that it's important that with this much money to make sure that we do what the board wants and we listen to the schools and get it right, that be something that I will ask the board at a future time. There's instructional coach and things like that, career focused. You just kind of heard from John Turner. As we move forward, what are we doing with these students who, in that we have the high school one, but as we move to career academies. So we can go back to the other, Ms. Kim. So that kind of takes us through 2, and then last week, 2 weeks ago, had another meeting, and they said, hey, and they were tricky because we had been looking for the dollar amount. We'd heard a lot of different things. So you can keep scrolling, Ms. Kim. So then during that meeting, they were like, hey, it's posted. Well, probably everybody on that meeting went straight to where the post was, and lo and behold, 7.3 million. And now I thought I was doing really good getting 3-year contracts and 2. And then I said, okay, 7.3. So then I was 10, I'm up to 10. I'm like, ooh, 2024. Again, these 3, I think they're just going to be fluid for you. But if you scroll down, Ms. Kim, what they saying in 3 now, it's 2080 rule. So now they're saying 20% must address learning loss. So there'll probably be like, as long as you spend 20%, we'll probably spend more. I mean, if that's what we need. But there's the 20%, and then the 80% can be spent on anything that ESSER's 1 or 2 allowed you to. So we probably will get much more information, but I wanted the board to see it as, it's really not just 2, it's about 1, 2, 3, and we're gonna maximize as much as we can to make sure that we get we want that extra. I mean, I'm not giving up on 200, you know, if all we gotta do is spend it this way, we can get that done. And so, and account for that. And then, like Ms. Slosser said, that some of these items are gonna be things that the general fund we're gonna try to take that off, you know, to give the general fund back if we can, and we can make it work in the 85-15 or the 20-80. But again, that's why I go back to that finance piece, you know, in order to do that, we really need to also have a bit of a laser focus on that. So that's 1, 2, and 3, carrots, gears, Esther's crescent, whatever you want to call it. And I'm here to answer any questions. That was on my evaluation. I do talk fast. Questions? And if you have them along the way, you can ask me. I mean, we're still learning too, but
I get a copy of this. You just go through so fast.
yes.
I think there'll be more conversations along the way. I think as you all continue to flesh out how these funds are spent, we'd love to happening so that we can demonstrate to not only us, but also our community. This is a lot of money, but it's being utilized very effectively to help children, to help families, you know, to make sure that the last year that we've experienced, we've learned lessons, and we're doing our very best with the resources that we have to continue to support them so that we can get back what we lost.
We can, I mean, however you want, we can tag on to the finance report, you know, just a little separate if that's, I don't mind quarterly coming through and kind of sharing with you, because like you said, as much as I want to spend it exactly like that, I know that after this year, my title budget, you know, what I wanted to spend it on was Summer Green Academy, and I can't, you know what I mean? So we have to be prepared for that, but we are going to keep students in mind with that 85% direct services and provide the general fund with whatever relief is allowable, that we continue to go through that. But that's a start. That's not that. I'm just here to say I got 10 million.
I just to stress again, because I think this is important, board. When Ms. Baxter said this is a fluid document, it really is going to be a fluid document. I know everybody wants everything to return to normal next year, just like it once was. We don't want to say that, but it's not. The need of our kids is great. It's going to change some more between now and 2023 in ways that we cannot predict. So that document will change. So it will be important, I think, for us to continue to update you on what we find are the greatest needs at individual times throughout the school year. So just keep that in mind when you look at that spending plan. But certainly it has to be KDD approved. It must match all the 1,231 categories that for us to match. It will be spent with fidelity, and I wanted to stress that too. It is a lot of money, but this office is committed to doing it and getting it right. Okay.
And you heard the words iReady and MAP. Those are school world words, and that is going to be what we are talking about, whether we use one program or the other. But we want to present to the board where our kids are academically, because that's where we're going to address that. So when we talk about learning loss, you're probably going to see some numbers in front of you that we are not comfortable with, parents aren't comfortable with. But if we don't put that out there for the world to see, then we're never going to address that, correct?
Real numbers.
That's right, real numbers, and that's been a big part of the conversations that we've had this week as we've gone through the evaluation process with all the administrators, and I've been very fortunate to have that opportunity this week. And I've said to them, we want to do that at a minimum 3 times a year next year. So we're going to put that out there, and we may see some things that we're uncomfortable with, but I feel like that we're fortunate that we do have some funding out there, and you've got a great group of administrators and a great team overall. I mean, we really do want what's best for kids, and I can't imagine trying to address what has just happened this past year without some additional funds. And so, we want you to be a part of that as well. But there are education words out there that just are bizarre at sometimes. So anytime that comes up and we get excited and talk too fast and use an acronym and you don't know what it is, just raise your hand and we'll be there, okay? So now we're gonna turn it over to our next guest speaker.
And I'm not on cough medicine, so. You all have a blue binder. So you have here, so we don't, this will go in on the tentative budget. So, working through, all 3,400 line items of this budget, going through, on the front page is kind of a note summary of all of the following pages. Looking at the working budget you approved back in January versus the tentative budget next to it there. One thing I will point out, the beginning balance after we closed the month of March, I sent you guys, I think last week, I'm comfortable to say, I think our company is looking more like 6.1. I think we said 6 million even around February. So again, that's going to be a little different this year because we're in school this year where we wasn't at last quarter last year. So it's kind of varied a little bit, but I'm pretty comfortable to say it's 6.1. So it kind of gives you all that where we're starting from kind of basis. Going through there, I will say that if we're taught to budget conservatively on, don't estimate low on the revenues and high on the expenses. This is kind of a worst case scenario, okay? And this does not include a lot of these general fund relief, but referred to from the extra funds that are going to allow to us. So I do think this is pretty conservative. So I want to start out with that. Building this on all the salaries that out of general fund, they receive their step increase, which is just a year of service. Each person gets a step. And then also I included a 1%. That's just a starting basis. So if you all, at the May 13th board meeting, one of the agenda items will be approve the salary schedule. So if you all can give me feedback to get that, what you all want to anticipate to approve at May 13th, it can be a different scale of that. It can be the steps is going to be given. The step is about $150,000 increase, and each 1% is about $175,000 for both lifestyle and certified collectively. So if you all give me some feedback on what that looks like, we will make the other thing you all approve will be this. This is a draft form currently. We'll approve this at the May 13th, both the salary schedule and this tentative budget. So that's a big factor. That's a big percentage of the general fund budget is salaries. So I get that feedback how y'all want the direction on, we'll go from there. You all have spoken a couple times already too, the classified retirement. A few years ago, they came out and put a mandate out, so that would be a 12% increase each year. So that went from 26.94 up to 30.17 this year. That is reflected in this budget. It's an increase of about over $100,000.
Does that stop at some point, like, please, let's stop at some point, but I feel like that was part of it.
I do too, and I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. It's been going on, what, 3 or 4 years now, probably, something like that. And it's going to impact both the county government, city government, or local utilities that are government employees. This is CERS, which is all those occur too. So the health departments, I mean, we're all feeling that pain right there. So the outsourcing at Cumberland and Mr. Lyons actually just sent me an email while we've been in here that they're going to continue. They've lost some revenue this year because we've not been in school in session to have those billable services that they make up the difference of. But they're going to continue the contract at the same rate at the $56,000. That is going to be one of them we can move and qualify to the 85% rule, but it's a direct service to students. So we will, but do that. Certain insurances are allowable to extras and certain aren't. We're going to play by the rules to get that extra $211,000 that Ms. Badger spoke of. We're expecting an increase in workman's comp. But we did, you all approved last month, the student accident policy for next year. That was a 3% reduction. So that is reflected in here in this. We're working on our property insurance, kind of leveled it out a little bit. PDA didn't get to do all their evaluations last year, so they're catching up. And then, so we're kind of, where we're at on that. Seat, we always say 4,000, we all know they get in the ballpark, but they never really hit that ceiling, so that's kind of a conservative number as well. Your site-based allocations are still, we funded them at the current level. You all approved those back in March, the allocation, so that is reflected in this. We kept the fuel the same rate. We do know it's going up some, but we think there's some opportunities there. The property tax for now, we'll talk about that later in August, but right now I assume no increase. And purchasing 3 buses with cash. The capital outlay is a funding source that we can do some projects with, and recently we kind of held on to that to help our bonding potential, so we're leaving that there. And a few things that it does not include, we're looking into doing what's called, we can charge an indirect cost. We're going to possibly do that for food services that build their healthy balance or reliable. We're looking into that. The other one we can do is ESSERs, and that will provide some more general fund relief to some income coming back for those. A big one, and Mr. Turner kind of touched on this, is the in lieu of. So the county government approved a few years ago some different funding sources, some taxes on Maker's Mark. It's not a new practice. We've had it in other ones that have expired. But as Maker's Mark continues to grow and put new properties out, it's very complicated. It's not very clean. So I talked to the judge last week. I talked to him again this morning. We're going to sit down together and go through these to ensure that we're getting all that what we're supposed to be getting, because some of them are in Loretta, some of them around Portland. There's also the distilled spirits tax. So it's very complicated. So we're working on that. So it's not, the additional is not there. I do think there will be an increase in that. And then, of course, the full-day kindergarten. We did not include that yet. We know it's coming for this year, but it's short-term money right now. Like it's in the statute that it's just a 1 year until they do something different. So until we get the final number for sure, we've got that out. So that there is going to be some additional revenues coming into this. I just want to point that out to you all. EMS budget, so I will say a couple things too about some ESSERS things. She mentioned maybe some utilities and insurance. So what we can do is we did this back in December when they sent us our seat payment as a grant, basically. We went and recoded some utilities and stuff. So if for some reason we have an odd number left over, we can apply that. So it may not cover all utilities. So right now we're budgeting that we will pay for them out of general fund. But as Mr. Benefield says, the game's the rule change and to be very fluid. If there's something there, we can go back and recode those. A big one we spent a lot of time on, I've learned a lot about this year, is maintenance of physical effort, which addresses our funding toward our special needs population. So basically, once you spend a certain dollar, the state requires you to continue to do that unless something changed. Maybe you've had some students graduate or move, but there's some very strict rules on that. If we don't, we lose additional federal money back into the district. So we monitor that very closely to make sure we're spending to that threshold. Michelle up here has done a fantastic job this year on making sure that we met that, we qualified, that way we continue to get the same funding going forward. So,
and so basically, if we spend $3 million on exceptional needs children, or 3 million, I should say, never 3,000, 3 million, we're required every year to continue to spend 3 million. And if we don't, we pay that back. That's a federal law, non-American public schools law, okay? And they audit us.
absolutely.
And so, and that is the same whether our children increase or decrease. There's a set number of that, and we work with them on that. So that's something that, you know, if you didn't do this every day, that's not something you would know. So I want to mark that up.
And when they do it, you don't actually send the money back, they just reduce your funding for the next year. So that's a big hit for budget planning. If you're anticipating the same federal dollars and you don't, then you got to pick it by a general fund.
We're talking about basically the special ed.
Yes. So right now, coming out of the general fund, we have $714,293 coming out of it to go into that. The
Our
general fund.
requirements,
I'm sorry.
our requirement right now to meet our threshold is 2.4. And then we just met this week to monitor so where we're at to make sure if we close to the end of the school year that we're going to meet the 2.4. Because if not, like Ms. Harper said, we get reduced. If we spend less than 2.4, for next year, they're gonna send us less money. So we wanna make sure, and the other thing is, if we go over the 2.4, then now we've raised our threshold going forward for the following years. We really monitor that to keep it at the 2.4. And then we want to meet it, but not exceed too much to make sure where we're at. And that also, that's one pot of money. We're not reducing service to students. We're just making sure we're utilizing and coding things correctly to meet that threshold.
And Ms. Sharp, what she did was, we did have a discrepancy there, and every year, the board, when we look at the numbers, 2.4, if we have exceptions, like if, for example, a student required a very specific, apparatus, or maybe a nurse, and then they no longer with us, we can reduce that 2.4 back because that service, or if we didn't need as many teachers because our numbers, like, we had a large decrease, you can kind of creep that. It's very hard to creep it, but that's what Ms. Sharp did an amazing job on, was that we were a little bit low, so she figured out, where was that? What happened? Sometimes you get a brand new teacher and they only cost this much, but somebody who retired costs this much. So, again, it's that fund, which goes back to the finance and the federal dollar, so it's very important. But, I think she does a great job always trying to make sure, we're not just keep creeping up and up.
I think it would be helpful for when we start talking about salary schedules, because there are a lot of different pools of funding that salaries come from,
Sure.
to understand exactly, which position's salary is covered by Title I, which positions are covered by a different pool of funding.
By that.
Yeah, and so a breakdown of here's 75% of the salary is covered by this. That means 25% of it is covered by the general fund.
Sure.
So that would be good.
And some are exactly like it. Some positions are some blended funding. Some people want to get a percentage of this fund and a percentage of another fund to make up their budget.
And our auditors, every year, they look at that as well.
Absolutely. So
And they will look at the amount of time that someone in this office spends doing a certain role, and they're gonna verify that we are coding that correctly. So for instance, Ms. Badgett, I'll use her. 75% of her salary comes out of Title I. Now, they're not going to allow us to say 100%.
Right.
Okay, and so, she's managing Title I, but she also does some other things, and so it's not going to be full Title I, but that gives us an opportunity. I mean, she's basically serving multiple roles, but a lot of what she does is that Title I. So that also saves the general fund money as well. Ms. Sharp and several of her staff actually come out of IDEA. Mr. Lyons has staff that actually comes out of the CATS money, which is your technology money. But again, unless you did this every day, how would you know that? I mean, it just appears as though, there's this amount of money in the overall budget, and 80% is staff, but not all 80% of staffing comes out of the general fund.
So instructional coaching, like,
Instructional coaches, for instance.
so we have 7 instructional coaches right now, and all that's coming out.
There's 5, I think. We're down to 5. But some of them come from schools pay for some of their title, and some have a general fund. Some schools are all general funds, they don't have title.
Okay. It's making more sense now.
Yes.
And that also ties back into when we do our school report card that the public can see when it talks about, all the different requirements. We have to talk about per pupil spending. So then, you can't just, and you can compare that. How much money does Marion County Public Schools spend on a child versus a Fayette County or an Oldham County or, a Marshall County? And so that's all public. And we want to make sure that we do that the right way, because if we are, spending money, we want to make sure that it does go to the children of that school. And we want you all to ask us questions because you all are questioned out in the community. And we want to be able to help you answer those questions.
So we'll have another work session on this.
I think this is good, so approval of which one is this? The tentative, and we've got one more to go after this.
So yes, you're right. So what happens is, good point, I'm glad you wrote it down and say. So we did the working in January. This is the tentative that has to be done in May. We get a final, once you all pass, it's kind of backwards, in my opinion, but in my opinion, don't care. So you all set a tax rate in August, and we'll set the final budget in September, after we already operated in July, August, or September in this budget. So you all do have one more opportunity to do the final, what's called the working budget in September, once the tax rate's set. So this will be approved in May, this gets us going, there will be some charges to this going through those first few months until we get the final September budget.
And remind me once again, when are we, the salary schedule?
May 13th,
Okay, so.
on that meeting, which will be,
Yeah.
so this will be on there, so we'll need some directions on how to prepare that
Okay.
for you all's consideration of approval at May 13th.
Well, I think definitely, the breakdown of salaries and which pools of funding, salaries come from. We
So
don't
you
need
want, where it comes, how much percentage comes out of each fund? That's
Yeah.
basically what you're looking
That
at.
would be great. And it doesn't have to break down like specific number, but just understanding like if a salary like Ms. Badgett's comes out of Title I, 75%, general fund 25%, so that we understand exactly what we are governing with regard to that
Sure.
individual salary. So that would be helpful to have for the May budget, or the May meeting. What else, guys?
My head's been wrapped around this stuff.
Yeah, there was something else.
Well, and then I think that what is unique to salary schedule in school world is that when you look at the salary schedule, it's not, when you apply for a job, then you go to the salary schedule. And it is based on your year's experience and your certification. So you could have the same person apply for the job or be in the job. They may not have the same number of years experience, or they may not have the same number of, they may not have a rank 1. So you could have the same person in a job 1 year, 3 years later, that position's salary could go up or down based on their year's experience and the number of certifications that they have. And that looks very different because in business world, you have a job description and you have a range. For us, we have a job description and then you go over to the salary schedule and it's based on what that looks like and the number of degrees that you have. So when you look at that, you've got a rank 1, a rank 2, a rank 3, or even a rank 4. And then it's just very different than what you deal with, Jim, in your job. And then, of course, my husband tells me how it's supposed to be too.
Can I ask,
Yes, you may.
on job description?
Yes.
So I have noticed in my research that some people have not even met that job description. Is there a reason for that?
Well, there's really not a way that a person can't meet that job description because in school world, we have something called a leave report. And that leave report is how we actually get funding. So then you heard me talk about munis. So when, and I'll use Mr. Brady as an example, he's the first one I see. So when we put him in our munis report and we say that he's the chief operations officer, there's a munis code that goes along with that. That then is tied to his certification. So if his certification doesn't match up with the munis, that doesn't match up with what the code is on that job description, it kicks it back. Same way with a teacher, the same way with any. Mr. Spalding, for example, he has a certification to be our finance director. Now, some certifications, like some of them start out as provisional, some of them are emergency, some of them are, we've just had them forever. We even now, for the first time ever, we have 7 different ways for a teacher to be a teacher. When I first started, you either had your certification or it was an emergency and that was it. Now there's 7 different ways to get that piece of paper, and our leave report would kick back if not. And then it ties into, it gets even so detailed that when they tie it to a class schedule. So when we have our, I mean, it all works together now. Again, it used to be a little piece of paper we all had to fill out, but there's not a way for us to say, it just won't work that way. If there's a job description, it's tied to a munis code, and then that's tied to our certification. So if there's one that appears any other way, then, I mean, you can ask me. And that's one of the things that Ms. Truitt had talked about, is if there are job descriptions that we're not using, we're just gonna abolish those. And how many do we have that we're just gonna take off the books?
It's a
Several.
lot. It's a page and a half.
Several. But, that's the way it works out. So Mr. Brady and Ms. Farmer works on the lead report in this office. But then our ladies at the school level have to make sure that a teacher's schedule matches up with their certification. So for instance, I'm certified to teach high school math. I can go down to 7th grade. Now, that means I can't teach 5th grade math. I mean, I can, okay, but I'm not certified to do that, so they can't put me in that. I could get emergency certification for 1 year, and that's it. Otherwise, I would have to go back to school and be able to go down to teach 5th grade. And it's the same way with all of our positions. They've got all that matched up. You know, I don't know if there was a moment in time when that happened, but now it goes all the way to Infinite Campus. That's our student accounting, our munis, which is our financial accounting. Then we have our lead report, and then our certifications. And that certification, when you click on someone's certification, it gives you permissions. So let's say somebody wants to change what somebody's teaching. If they're not certified to do that, they can't do it. It's not possible. I hope, does that help?
That helps, yes.
Good.
And I plan on getting with you
Okay,
later on. So
okay.
I just haven't had time, sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
It's a lot.
Any other questions for Scott tonight on?
Yeah, just budgeting for dummies here for me.
That's not nice.
So
We
no,
don't say that in school world, okay?
Yeah. All right, so the budget ends June, right?
June 30.
June 30th. And we've talked about a number that we like to be around, correct? Which is somewhere around the $6 million range, right?
So, like beginning balance, we typically have landed in the $6 million range. That's we were higher than that when we were first elected on the board. And I think there've been meetings in the past where we as a board at that time, that makeup at that time, expressed that our comfort level with our actual ending balance was between like 3.5 and 4 million. And so if we ever got below that number, we were going to be very uncomfortable, which would lead to uncomfortable decisions. So
I think it was a little higher, but okay.
well, yeah, I mean, the 2% by the state is just.
Well,
Yes,
my
yeah.
That's
question
just
to Scott,
bad.
just to explain something to me. So we're starting out at an actual number of 6 million, say, and then when I look down here at an end number, we're down to 2 million.
Correct.
And then we turn right back around and we're starting back with 5. Are we getting a boost on that number?
No, so here's what it is. So, when I was explaining that I figured high expenses,
Right.
low receipts, that's worst case scenario.
So when we're basing it toward the end of the year, we're going to guess that we're only going to have 2 million starting at ending, but we usually end up starting back out with 6 million,
That's
right?
correct. Because the revenues are more than I could budget for, and the expenses are less than the actuals are less than the budget.
Okay, but what if we ever come into that 2 million, then we're not starting out with 6 million?
That's
right?
correct. But we'll know that long before we get there, and then we can make
Okay, so for me,
adjustments throughout the year.
I'm just trying to understand at what point do we need to kick it and scream and say, hold up a minute, something's not
Well, I
right.
think it's up to
Because-
decide with you all. Kerry referred to the 2%. The state requires us to have 2% contingency fund, which is, I agree, way too low.
That's what, yeah.
But at that point, they'll get involved. But like I said, that's why every month we monitor that and kind of see where we're at. And we do a yearly comparison for where we were at that same time prior year. That way we can kind of see if we're up or down going into that.
So at this moment, right now, as we said, where are we on our number?
I think we are gonna start the year around $6.1 million.
Okay. And so the 2 million numbers, basically a fake number of a worst case scenario in a full year.
It's inflated, correct. That's if we just spent everything we budget expenses and we only got what we get in revenues, which are, our budget low revenue, high expenses for worst case scenarios.
And Joey, I think you and I talked about, like, you know, how a lot of times we'll come in and we'll say, well, we just saved X number of dollars on our insurance. I mean, that always helps that bottom line, or we get a grant and we do that. And so, I mean, that helps us out, but that is a conversation that every board member has every year. Why is it this way and not why is it not more like what we would do at our house?
It's your turn this year, Joe.
And yeah, that's because 4 million is a big number. You don't
Sure.
want, of course, you always want to plan the same way everybody is. Plan low, plan for the worst, expect the worst, plan for the best. But, what happens if it goes even worse?
Well,
We monitor monthly.
right, well, and that's the good part about every single month, we talk about the financial statement, and then like you said, you'd really like to get us back to where we're able to give you that up-to-date, that month's report as we decide what our board meeting dates are gonna be. And I would, while we're talking about this before we stop and adjourn, I do think that we are going to have some savings, additional savings because of ESSERs. We're gonna be able to pay for some things like our nurses, which is $56,000 for the next 4 years, if we can get that recoded. 21st century, some insurance, some utilities and things. I'd really like to ask the board to consider doing a 2% raise for our staff instead of a 1%. I mean, they've had this has been a year like no other. And if we're gonna have some ways to offset some of our general fund, and we're gonna end with a good balance.
You said 175,000?
Yes, so, yeah.
So we'll be up on 1% is 175.
Each person.
So with the step +2, we'd be looking at probably around 500,000.
That's correct.
And I know that's something that Scott needs to figure in at this May the 13th, and so that's something I'd really like for you all to kind of give him a head nod, and we can put that in there for our staff. We're gonna be able to save, when I say pay for nurses, we're gonna be able to do that for the next 4 years. So when I say 56,000, or hopefully, we're gonna be able to do that for 4 years, that's a $200,000 savings. And what we want to come to you as well is to let you know some offset of the general fund, if that would be something that you all would consider.
And I think it would be helpful, we typically get this summary on the front of a budget that says it does include this, it doesn't include this. As the ESSERS stuff starts to shake out, it would be helpful to see those savings maybe put back into that budget that we approve in September, so that we get that this is worst case scenario, but that scenario is pretty bad.
It is. I went back to look last year. It was like, now it's a little over $100,000, which makes sense too because of the increase of the classified retirement.
Right. Yeah.
So that is built in there. So it's back where we're starting off, very compared to where we were this time last year as far as looking at this document.
Right.
And I guess for me, and I'm sure everybody's had the same question, but
That's
we're
okay.
almost through the fiscal year, how is it? It seems like we could be closer on the numbers, but I mean, maybe that's something.
Well, like I said, looking back, it's hard to, what I try to do is always look at actuals for the last few years. Well, last year, the actuals were very skewed.
But you had to go back to.
Correct. So it's kind of going back, and then the cost of certain things have gone up some, we've got 30% reduction instead of 19. So just try to keep it level playing field for right now until we get a rip. And then like I said, this extra is really going to provide a lot of opportunity for some general fund relief.
And I think, on these, it was my turn a couple of years ago to ask that particular question. So if there is ever an opportunity, and I know that you've got all the time in the world, really, but if there's ever an opportunity to say, look at our audit at the end of the year and let that inform maybe our budget, if that ever, like if the planets ever align, if the stars ever come into place and that can happen, I think, we talk about the difference between reality and ending balance on our budget, and there's a big gap. And so, it's always a good idea, yes, budget conservatively on your revenues and extra on your expenditures so that you're not caught unawares. But if we can tighten up that distance,
Okay.
that would be wonderful. This is the financial summaries that we get every month are great to inform our decision-making as it goes, but this is the document by which we make some bigger decisions. So,
And one of the curveballs that kind of do to the federal program money, like another 15 months, 30 months, they start in July and go to the fall on September 30, so they kind of overlap in the general fund, so they may expire, and have to start picking up something later, so it's not really that everything lines up just right, to make it very clear sometimes too. So.
the other thing, that for May 13th, I feel like there's a spreadsheet that exists out there that kind of breaks down what you just talked about, that down the left-hand column, it was year 1 to year 30, and across the top,
Yes,
it is
salary
specific.
schedule for you guys.
Yeah, I tried to find it some other, through like old emails and stuff and couldn't, so if you just make sure that that's a part of it,
You
so
want
that
just
we
current
can
years,
see.
the
Yeah, that would be
principal?
great.
Okay.
That would be great. Because it's very helpful to see, like, if we have a teacher that we hire or is in a position that's 20 years in and they've got a rank 3, the difference in the salary schedule versus a teacher that's in year 3
We'll include
with a
that,
rank
please.
1. Yeah, that'd be helpful. Anything else anybody wants to see or ask about?
We can actually send you, we have Ms. Office 2%, so we can send you all multiple
Yeah,
side by side.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
The schedule, when you were talking about I want to make sure I understood this correctly. If we spend this money correctly, we could get a potential like $200K bump. Is that when or how do we see that? Is that like a lump sum at some interval, or is it just like sprinkled in?
From what we
Overtime.
understand is if you meet, when I budget into the federal system and the Kentucky Department of Education system, when I start to budget in those codes, and I'd say it's a direct service or indirect, I believe it's gonna be based off your ADA, like $75 per your ADA. So I don't know when they're gonna pull that, but I believe it was probably be a lump sum, like when they decide the date. Yes, you met it, and then, okay, you have this many students, here's your 75,000, and then, they would give that finance. So I think you would see it wouldn't trickle in, it would be probably a lump sum. We're not sure how many, because that money is coming from the pot of money that KDE got we got 3.25 million, well, KDE got a chunk too. So they decided in that chunk that they're gonna put a little caveat of 85-15 on us, and we'll get some of theirs. So, but I do believe it will be one, you would see it at one time.
Okay.
Don't know, I think they're still lining out people like us who are a little bit more progressive, we didn't have to buy all those Chromebooks, because Chromebooks don't count in ESSERS 2. So if you spend that, there's gonna be some people out there who cannot meet that 85-15, which for us, again, I know we talked about it, the proactivity of us for 60 years plus, this lost our visions of these big dreams is, we were ready already. We were ready to say it's deployment time, not I need to buy 5,000 Chromebooks, where people are like, sorry, you don't have any. So that kind of, they kind of been in there, so I'm sorry, I'm trying to talk slower, but maybe very down, but I would hope to see that just that you make as a
It's just the excitement.
It is. It makes you excited, I guess, or makes you want to sleep. But, right there.
A caveat to that, Kentucky's the only state that chose to do 75-15% That's why it's kind of different too. We've been getting direction both from the U.S. Department of Ed and this is a Kentucky specific thing, so it's kind of a new to us.
Yeah, and so like you said, I think when I was trying to list about that, knowing the ESSERs, that fluidity of the 1, 2, and 3, what it looks like now, Scott and I are gonna work before you close out a fiscal year, like, did we miss anything? And then, it might not be till that end where we say, hey, wait a minute, because we've done that on a few other items, like, hey, can I pay for this? I need, so those things may be trickling in as we see them, because we can't catch everything, which is why, this much, and making sure that this is, the way we want to spend it, but we'll make sure that, I'm gonna pay for it. If I can pay for it out of, ESSERs, then I'm gonna make sure that's done, and, Scott will work on, I don't know everybody utilities.
We're gonna make sure we hit that 85%.
He's gonna tell me, and I'm gonna sign, that, yes, make sure that's allowable, so hopefully you would see that too, but I don't know if you'd see it like right there in that, but we could probably estimate what we're gonna try to push back into that 2 point.
Anybody else? Okay. Do be thinking about if there's any items that you'd like Scott to include or any information for anybody else to include, then do be thinking about that and let them know. And I need a motion for item 6. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.